identity is really important, and it's the cornerstone of every decision you make, whether you want to believe it or not. Identity and mindset is something that sometimes it takes people an entire lifetime to understand truly what it means to have a strong identity, what it means self, the word self itself. What does that mean? What does that encompass?
I've been in this industry now going on 17 years as we flip the calendar here. And I was kind of, they would say fake it before you make it. And I was faking it a lot. But I realized that I never wanted to have that experience again.
If you were to give someone who did not have a strong sense of self and then you gave them $1 million, they would be successful on paper, but would they know what to do with $1 million? Would they know what the next step is? Maybe not. They'd just be sitting there. Maybe they might blow the money. It would not be used in a proper way. At the same time, if you give it to someone who's maybe spent 10 years learning about themselves, built maybe a small business, they have aims and goals and ambitions, and you give them $1 million, it took them longer to get to that stage, but they'll be able to use it better.
And by asking better questions, you're going to start seeing patterns, because success leaves clues. The dopamine hit, right? Another 3 seconds, another 10 seconds, whatever. Here's a funny cat video. Oh, here's my favorite streamer, whatever. It's no worse than being addicted to drugs, alcohol, sex, money, whatever vice is your thing. We've become conditioned to it, right? It's somewhat of a necessary evil. Much as we try to do those things for the dopamine hits or the quick cash or whatever, that always comes up empty. It never fulfills us like it thinks it will. Is another important tool is you need to live by your calendar. So if you don't have a clear calendar of your life and business, your life's just going to be without a rudder.
And the younger you are, the younger you can start working on yourself and learn and be self-aware and pick up on your own cues, the things that set you off, the things that keep you going, the thing that gets you out of the bed in the morning. If you start picking up it in a more proactive way, it gives you more control in the future.
You got to give yourself grace to when things happen, right? Did I at least get better 1% today?
If you are a young entrepreneur, then you might live in fear of wasting time and energy chasing the wrong goals, leading to years of regret. In today's episode, I'm going to deep dive into identity and mindset to try and fix that problem at the source. I speak to Dan Ahlborn, a successful real estate investor and coach, where he explains that a strong sense of self is the rudder that guides your life and business and prevents you from crashing into the rocks of failure. He shares a hard-won truth. You can choose to be something different, whether that's different from your family, different from your peers, different from yourself just a day prior. You need to be constantly improving. And today you'll learn the practical steps for rewiring your brain to move past your self-limiting beliefs. And you'll be surprised how many self-limiting beliefs you might have with you today. I invite you to listen in to today's episode and use that powerful inner clarity to help you make better decisions for a truly fulfilling life. Dan, thank you so much for coming on to the Starting Story podcast with me today. It's a pleasure to have you on, someone who's so big in the space of identity and mindset and coaching people, and a real estate investor as well. So really got different variables going for you there.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to chat. We were just talking offline. I mean, we almost had our podcast there. We're like, hey, let's save it for the actual thing. So I'm excited to talk about this topic because truthfully, it's something that's near and dear to my heart and very passionate about. And I think understanding this, Krishna, is so critical to just achieving a higher quality of life on so many different levels.
I totally agree. I mean, when we had our little meeting, we had to kind of hold the reins in, didn't we? But it's for that same reason. Like, identity and mindset is something that sometimes it takes people an entire lifetime to understand truly what it means to have a strong identity, what it means self, the word self itself. What does that mean? What does that encompass? It's so deep, that topic. And I'm sure in our episode today, we won't be able to really fully grasp it, but it's about trying to get the practical frameworks there for someone who's young, who's a student, a young entrepreneur, someone trying to make a footstep in this big world. How can they make that footstep with confidence and with a strong sense of self, I suppose? So, do you want to give like a quick introduction to who you are and why you are the perfect person to be talking about this?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, my name is Dan. I'm a real estate investor by trade. I've been in this industry now going on 17 years as we flip the calendar here in a short
Wow.
window of time. And what I realized early on, Krishna, is that I failed forward for the first 12. I didn't have
Mm,
a lot of this stuff figured out. And I love what you're saying. It's a constant progression. I think we're always getting better. You'll never get to the point of leading. We so gamify things in life. A lot of people play video games. Heck, I'm almost 50 and I still love video games, right? So we're always trying to get to that level. We're trying to get to max prestige. We're trying to level up and beat the boss, right? We never get to that true ultimate level of perfection, right?
mm,
So, but early on, I didn't have a lot of these things. My history is I came from kind of a broken home. My dad was in a serious accident when I was 4. My mom turned to drugs and alcohol, and really I was thrown a lot to different
mm.
families. I didn't have a home per se of like that I could call this is my family. So through all of that, I realized I had to do a lot of the stuff on my own, right? So at age 18, I was running my own restaurant. I kind of just forged ahead with a lot of grit and determination.
Mm.
And then again, I got the real estate bug early on and kind of just figured out I got some training online, started doing some marketing, and lo and behold, I'm making deals, right? And I wasn't really even treating it like a business early on, but because of all the stuff I had in my past, the baggage, the my history,
Yeah.
I had a lot of self-limiting beliefs, but I did know deep inside who I really wanted to be.
Mm.
I didn't know how to get there, right? And I had all this baggage telling me, "Oh no, that's who you are. That's who you are. That's who you are." But I knew there was something more deep inside of me. So it wasn't really till I had a crossroads in my business that I had to kind of take this jump into stepping into who I was. We can talk about that and how that all came to be. But through that, I've been able to kind of take my life from I live currently in Southwest Florida, but I
Mm.
moved my whole life from Wisconsin and now live in Florida, run my business 100% remote. And it's primarily predicated on me understanding my identity and stepping into it.
Wow. I mean, I'm sorry to hear that kind of upbringing. It's always difficult to hear that. And I've had guests in the past where they have kind of, divulged. And I am really grateful that people can tell me such a harsh beginning. And it really is part of your identity, right? As much as you can try to
Well, and if
move.
I can just speak to that, I thank you
Yeah,
for
of
your
course.
kind words. But see, we can either see that as a victim, that this is a
Yes.
horrible situation.
Mm.
I don't see it that way. I saw that
Wow.
as part of my story, and I become a victor from it. What did I learn from it? I learned hard work. I learned determination. I learned that ultimately, if I'm going to make something in my life, nothing's going to be given to me.
Yes.
Those are the lessons I learned from that. Would I have learned that if I was in the typical, you know, two parent home with not all the challenges I faced? You know,
Who
I could
knows?
talk to
Yeah.
another person that had it way worse than me. So I think there's a sentiment of that. But when I learned and got peace with that early on, it helped me kind of build from that versus use that as well, that's just the way I am because X. And that's a
Yeah.
pitfall we fall into.
There you go. I'm glad you interjected me there. You're so right. Life can hit us hard, but it's up to you how you respond from it, how you bounce
Yes.
back. And one way to bounce back is just going that this is life and I have to move forward. And,
Mm,
how can either I can just let it drag me down or I can try and find a way to let it bring me up. And it's really pivotal you saying that you decided, I'm going to use this to become a victor rather than a victim
hmm
and I'm going to actively choose to let it guide my decisions moving forward. And you are
Yeah.
right, a lot of the guests I've spoken to where they do say things like this, it does become this element of, well, it gave me the power, it gave me the inspiration, it gave me the motivation to do something different. For some people who had
hmm
poor parents, they sometimes say it gave me the motivation to be the first person to become a millionaire in my family. It's all these things, right, that kind of push you forward.
hmm
And yeah, it's the what's it called, the sliver in the cloud kind of thing. So
Yes.
I agree with that kind of concept. And you then saying that identity is the one thing that you knew you needed, but you didn't quite know how to grasp it, I suppose. And it's something that resonates with a lot of young people.
hmm
I think we all agree sometimes we feel like we're getting pushed and shoved in different directions, especially as a young person, if you're dealing with social media
hmm
or lots of different friend groups or
Yes.
conflicting arrangements, money. We don't exactly have money in our hands, do we, when you're
hmm
young? You're there thinking, well, I know who I want to be in 20 years' time, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. And that in itself can seem like a big mountain to climb. So I thought that'd be quite a good thing to start off with.
Yeah.
You said that identity is what you wanted, but you weren't sure how to get there. how can someone start making the correct steps to figuring out themselves?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, a lot of those things you just talked about was exactly that. I had a very negative view on money. I did
Mm,
not have much of anything growing up, specifically being in that family situation. If we had money to even eat, that was, I mean, I never went hungry. I was actually, if anything, I was an overweight kid, probably ate too much when I was younger. But the reality is, no one taught me how to use money, right?
right.
Money came in, it went out. We never saved money. We lived day by day, paycheck to paycheck. My mom was a waitress, working
Mm,
her butt off just to provide ends meet at the point in time. So, no one even in my family tree at that stage of my life could I see as a model to be successful. So
mm,
when you don't have those type of people in your life, it's really hard to kind of give a basis.
of course.
Now I'm a little bit old school. This was pre-social media, so I didn't have all the influences that we see today of everything. And of course, you see everything in 30, 60, 100, 90-second clips of a polished version of someone.
Mm,
Very few times they really tell you the backstory of how it came. So part of that is, I knew I wanted to be something more than what I was. But early on, I realized, I was overweight, right? So I never felt like I was super that healthy. I was never athletically gifted, although I love sport. I tried
mm,
playing sport, wasn't very good at it, but I enjoyed it. So I had all these self-limiting beliefs inside me, Krishna, that I couldn't defeat. Or what would happen is I would get certain levels of success,
yeah.
and then I would basically be my own worst enemy. I would stop doing the things that I know I needed to do to be successful. And usually
Mm,
that comes in the form of adversity. Sometimes we get that first little taste of that and we're like, oh, I guess I can't do this.
mm,
I mean, those I am statements in a negative way are reinforcing what you should be doing the exact opposite, which is leaning into that, doing more of what you're doing, trying to think critically, how can I see this as an opportunity versus a challenge, right? So I
mm,
had all of that stuff and I had my backstory that prevented me. And what I realized, it was pivotal for me that a point in time came when I was in real estate and I was actually marketing to people that had distressed situations. These are people maybe that were, lost a parent or, whatever the case may be. They're going through financial issues or foreclosed on. And I got a letter in the mail being the guy that I was going to be foreclosed on.
mm,
So it's kind of surreal when you think of it in that regard. Like here I am marketing to people and I happen to be on that list. I was kind of, they would say fake it before you make it, and I was faking it a lot. But I had all these self-limiting beliefs, and I was literally a phone call away from a friend of mine who gave me a little bit of money to get me out of that hole. But I realized that I never wanted to have that experience again. That was the first pivotal point that I got to the point of almost like losing it all. That it had to hurt
gosh.
so bad to make change. And usually when we get pain in our life, we want to go to pleasure. And to your point, in today's world, we have it everywhere. I mean, we get on our phone, we can doom scroll for what? Hours on end and get
Dopamine hit
yeah, the dopamine hit, right?
constantly.
Another 3 seconds, another 10 seconds, whatever.
Yeah.
Here's a funny cat video. Oh, here's my favorite streamer, whatever. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but if that's our default, it's no worse than being addicted to drugs,
Mm,
alcohol, sex, money, whatever vice is your thing.
true.
This is the exact same way, but we've become conditioned to it, right? It's somewhat of a necessary evil. So what I'm saying is that okay, we have to find ourselves who we really are. And when I had that moment in time where I really hit rock bottom, I started figuring out okay, I had to be something different. So what I started doing is like I need to get around more people of who I want to be. So I found local meetups. Like I'm in real estate. So specifically I found a local investor club. I felt like I was above my skis, but I started networking with those people, asking good questions. What does it take to do this? How does that happen? Sticking around after the meeting and getting to know these people, eventually doing business with some of these people.
Nice.
And that's the beauty thing with real estate is specifically here in the US is that you don't need to have a lot of money. You just need to have a lot of hard work and effort and leverage
Mm,
other people to get things done. So that was kind of the first iteration of that is, surrounding myself with the right people. The second is just constant education. I've been a firm believer since that point. Okay, I need to level up my mindset and I'm going to do more reading. So I got into a lot of self-development stuff, reading the old school stuff from like Napoleon Hill, Covey, and then eventually getting into the Tony Robbins stuff. That
mm,
really can help you focus and rewire your brain. Because that's the thing behind this is our brain is like a map. And there's defaults. It goes, right? If you touch a hot stove, it's going to hurt, right? So the next time you get near a hot stove, you're going to realize I'm not going to touch that. Well, we can in our brain wire negative pathways and negative responses to things. And that's where those negative statements like, oh, that's the way I always am. I'm always overweight. You come up with excuses. Well, there's power and there's straight science behind it that once you understand who you want to be, and you have clarity on that,
Hmm.
right? You then can rewire your brain, much like with muscles and repetition and getting strong, that you can reinforce that with positive I am statements and then doing the things necessary each day to remind yourself of that. And eventually that becomes like your default. So instead of having these ruddy old roads that are tough to navigate, you can basically pave over the top like super highways that are super smooth. And that is your new default to define that identity. And
Hmm.
then you look at the old version of you is part of your story to get to you to where you are. So those are the things that are
Yeah.
important that were for in my life that I had to kind of go through. And for me, it was a long journey. I
Yeah.
was kind of stubborn that way. It just
Yeah.
took me a little bit longer to go through that, and I had to have some oopses along the way.
Yeah. Of course, it's a quite a good answer, and I think the main points there is that surround yourself with the people you want to be with, especially if, like in your case, like in my case, you don't have that direct family connection to someone who is, I don't know, a
Hmm.
millionaire or a business person, or you know, in what you would call or what your aim is. Surround yourself with the people. There's always there's networking events, and I'm starting to do them more and more as well.
Hmm.
It's actually a skill I'm trying to learn more, networking, and try to make those connections because. It's not for the transactional value. I think some people get networking wrong, or they think, oh, okay, I'll network so I can learn from this guy and give nothing back. No, the point of the networking is that you make a actual connection, not just a fake
Yes.
connection, a deep connection with this person. You give them gain, they give you gain, and
Hmm.
that thing can pay back 10 years later down the line. And as I said, I've spoken to people both in and out of the podcast where they say that 20 years down the line, they spoke to someone and they came in clutch and helped them out.
Hmm.
So it's about making those connections. But then second of all, it's about that self part, right? If you want to learn about yourself, then you need to put your own energy into it. You can't. There's really no one else in the world who can teach you 100% thoroughly how to find yourself. And I do agree that you can reach out to books, and Tony Robbins is a great example, and other coaches to kind of get you in the right direction, but you have to put the effort in.
Yes.
If you're not willing to look for the signals in yourself, if you're not willing to reflect, to journal, if something annoys you, trying to find out why did that annoy me. If something makes you happy, oh, that made me happy. Why? If you're not willing to be self-aware, then you're not ever gonna figure out. You're just gonna be You're not a victim. I should say. You're just gonna be a kite in the wind, rather
Hmm.
than someone controlling the kite. And yeah, I think it's something that I've been learning slowly, and people around me as well. I think one thing I started doing quite recently, I don't know if you ever tried it, was video reflections. I used to think that sometimes when you keep something in your mind, you can try and solve it. You know, if you've got a knot or if there's a big problem you're
Yeah.
handling, like sometimes in the podcast, you're handling 10 different domains and you've got 1 hour and you're like, well, how the hell do I do all this? Uh, sometimes opening your phone and just recording yourself and just talk it through as if you've got someone there, even though you've not got someone there, just talk it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes it helps you, gives you clarity, right? And everyone has their own way and method of doing it, but you need
Hmm.
to be able to teach yourself and learn from the process. I think it's quite a fun process. You learn a lot about yourself,
Yeah.
and you start to pick up cues that maybe you never really realized existed. But it
Well,
gives
and you
you,
think about this, obviously I'm in real estate investing. I invest in real estate and we
mm,
may invest in whatever that could be. It could be that you're investing in crypto, you're investing in, whatever that may be. It could be even a pleasure thing. You're investing in that dopamine hit. The
mm,
reality of what you just said, Christian, I think is so important. What are you doing to invest in you?
exactly.
Because the amount of time, money, and resources that I've put back into myself over the last 2 to 3 years, it's been a lot. I've made good money, but I've also reinvested, and it's always served me
Mm,
probably tenfold because I've put myself in front of people that I wanted to be like, or they had a skill, or to your point, how can I add value? Because you're right,
yeah.
it's not always about the take. What can you give? And I'll say this, the more you can give, the more you're going to receive. And if you come from that heart first, it will always serve you well.
Yeah,
So I think
always be
that's so
willing to give.
important that you
Yeah.
kind of look like, what are you doing to make yourself better? Because then your default comes to what you were just saying. Like, why did I react that way? I mean, I just had this conversation with my wife. We had a kind of an interesting discussion yesterday, and some things happened, and her and I both asked that question. Why is that our default?
Mm.
Too often we don't take that time. We just assume that's just the way. I hear that too often. Well, that's just the way I am.
Why?
Shenanigans, man. I think that's horse pucky. Like, you can choose to be something different. Do you want to be that way? Because you have the power to change it, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and that's something I think as a young person, if you're listening, it's you're in the right place at the right time to be doing that.
Mhm,
If you can figure out really early on the things that trigger you, the things that make you happy, the things that control you, the things that you control,
mhm.
it means that later on it's only going to serve you better. Otherwise,
Yeah.
if you keep delaying it, sometimes people have a big catastrophe at the age of 50.
Mhm.
And then they're like, damn, if I'd have only worked on this earlier on, maybe I could have saved those years. Uh, and it's one of
And
those
and
things
s
that in
I yeah.
retrospect, you live in regret if you don't fix it.
Yeah, and the journey sometimes is not fun. There's
Mm,
more convenient things to do in today's world, and specifically being young and an entrepreneur and all these things, we are distracted so many different ways from Sunday to find something that's more enriching. But I will say, once you start on that journey, and that's the toughest part, is taking that
mm,
first minute or two of work, of prep work, of just starting it. It'll be like a stone rolling down the hill, gaining momentum. And you're going to start thinking, oh, okay. Oh, okay. And like you said, it could be a voice memo. It could be even leveraging AI and saying,
yeah,
hey,
true.
chat, hey, Gemini, whoever your favorite LLM is, and just talk to it and have it ask you questions to get introspection into your life, and maybe help you understand your situation more, because a lot of the reasons we are the way we are is based upon either our past, or even more importantly, could be historical things in our family. Maybe there's just, that's the way the Allborns always did it, right? Well, does that mean that you have to do it that way? Not necessarily. So that's where you can break some of those generational chains that perhaps could limit you if you allow it.
Yeah, that's true. I think one thing that I wanted to pick on was even though we talked about going on those networking meetings and talking to people, I've been to networking meetings and you've definitely been more than me. I think we could both agree that if you are trying to learn from someone about how to be yourself, it can be quite deep a topic to introduce initially.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is if you just walk up to someone, I'm sure you wouldn't do it, but if you just walked up to someone and said, "Oh, how can I learn about myself?" They might be like, "Whoa, I'm not really ready for that in this meeting. It's more about just business. Let's just keep it shallow." How can you build that relationship with someone so that you can start to learn about those deeper parts of life, about those things that maybe people don't talk about, keep more hidden, but are really
Yeah.
important?
Great question. I think part of it, you just you want to get to know the person first. Go in with just asking good questions, whatever your industry, your niche is. Tell me a little bit about you and your business. Maybe there's some opportunity. I mean, whether you're thinking that or not, in your mind's like, how can I learn more about this person?
Hmm.
People love talking about themselves. You know, hey, I heard you say something to someone about X. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Oh, really? Why is that important to you? How'd you get started into that?
Mm.
Eventually, what you're gonna find is their why do we do the things we do? And from there, it's probably not a day one conversation, but over time, maybe over coffee or tea, when you're meeting with these people in a social setting and you're getting to know them on a deeper level, or you're just sitting down chit chatting like we are here today, you can have some more of those organic conversations.
Mm.
It's like, hey, have you ever thought about why you do the things you do? No, not really. Yeah, it's interesting. And you can maybe share a little bit about your journey. Well, what are your thoughts on it? If you can have a candid enough conversation, you can have some really organic, amazing, deep friendships built on stuff like that. Because not too many people talk about that. They're talking about the ball game last night, or did you check the latest headline that's going on in the crazy news cycle that's in the world today? I mean, those are things we need to be aware of, but that becomes the trivial things that we discuss, where it's like, if we talked more about that kind of stuff, Krishna, we would find more things, whether it be someone who lives halfway across the world, like you and I do, or just my
Mm.
next door neighbor. We have more in common than we do that we have differences. And
Yeah.
that's how we can bring unity together as well.
Yeah. So it's about making that relationship first, building that rapport, and then trying to get deeper with the person.
Hmm.
And like you said, identity and self is a very relatable topic.
Hmm.
You could speak to someone, you could be, I'm doing. I mean, this is a great example, isn't it? I'm doing a podcast. You're a real estate investor. You would think, what the hell are they going to talk about? But at the same time, you talk about identity, and suddenly you
Yeah.
have things to talk about because everyone's struggling or everyone's learned something throughout the course of their life.
Mhm.
Um, and there's always something to share. And another thing, just because we've mentioned it before, giving as well, because teaching someone or giving away advice can be a good way to learn about yourself as well.
Mhm.
People don't realize that, but the more you give away, the more you kind of learn in a way.
Yeah.
And even if you're at the lowest level you can think of, there'll always be someone lower who's willing to learn from you and get
Mhm.
something out of it if you can put yourself out there. So it can be easy, and I can definitely reflect being someone, a Gen Z. It can be really easy to block yourself in the room and just
Mhm.
say, well, I don't need to talk to anyone. I've got ChatGPT. They are my advisor for every single life situation I could possibly think
Right.
of. I've got social media. They can give me entertainment. And I've got my friends, and that's it. But you kind of have to push yourself out there, and stay. Don't just remain in the bubble, because
Mhm.
you'll be surprised how many connections you make and how much you can learn in that
Yeah, I
process.
would say, speaking of technology and AI, I love it. I think it's amazing. I was just on another call prior to this. We were just talking about like how this is revolutionizing it. And one of the
Mm,
guys in my networking sphere is like, I'm trying to stay on top of this. I'm having a hard time, and he's in the space. And so he's
yeah.
trying to serve people with AI solutions because a lot of people that just don't know, right?
Mm,
But what I find is what AI is going to do, Krishna, is it's going to force us to kind of revert back to more of the like, I need to have a real live human interaction.
yeah.
AI is an amazing tool. We can use it for thought provoking things. It can create beautiful things. I mean, we are just scratching the surface. 6 months from now, think about all the, I mean, it'll be unfathomable. Like, oh, wow, AI can do that too. Like, we're going to have more of those moments. It's only limited by the power we give it, right? And the prompts we give it, I guess. But
Exactly.
that being said, I think the one thing AI cannot have is soul. It can't have spirit. It can't
Mm,
have true, genuine interaction. And that's where it's always going to fall short. And I do believe, from a spiritual sense, 'cause I'm a believer in God, that we're all designed with that inherent thing in us, that we desire to have that connection, that intimacy with other humans. We were created as such.
mm,
And so I think as we grow in this technological boon that we're in right now and understand it, we're going to find that the need of just networking and connecting with people is going to feed our soul like nothing ever has, because we're going to have all these other things that just come up short. And just talking back to the identity piece, I think the important thing is this: is we're all like boats in this river of life, and we're kind of going down the river. The banks kind of keep us within line a little bit, can get
mm,
rocky at times, but one of the biggest things that can help us is a rudder, and the rudder is our identity.
mm,
And once we have our identity understood, it helps us. Now, again, we're still going to get shifted. The waves and the winds are going to come because that's life, but the rudder keeps us somewhat on a narrow pathway and helps us navigate it effectively, that we don't crash into the rocks or hit the shoreline. So that's why understanding identity, which is somewhat of an obscure term, but it's, I guess the best way I can explain it is it's who we really are and who we want to be, and stepping into that. And I do think identity is something that can change over time in different seasons of life.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
your identity at
definitely.
20 can be a different thing at age 50. At 20, you might not have any kids and be married, but at age 50, you might have adult children and doing the next stage of life. So that identity will evolve, but being aware of it allows you to get through those seasons a little bit easier.
Yeah, I agree. I remember being a little bit scared about the fact that, what if I spend so much time building my identity and then 5 years later it changes? What the hell was the point of that?
Mhm.
But then it's something you have to embrace. And I wanted to talk about, you mentioning about AI and how it doesn't have it doesn't have a soul, which I agree with, and how it can almost it can help you but can't get that genuine human connection,
Mhm.
right? I want to kind of think about, how can someone go about making those almost human connections, because it's quite funny you mentioned that. I literally read a LinkedIn article yesterday, and you know what they termed it? They termed it the human premium.
Mm.
Obviously, after hearing this,
Yes.
I have to click more and see what the hell they're talking about. And they're talking about nowadays in big businesses, they now have anti AI marketing campaigns.
Hmm.
Businesses are saying this product is made no artificial inside it, or here we can have a chat, but we're not going to use ChatGPT. And
Hmm.
it's like, well, AI is this amazing thing, but businesses are realizing that humans actually want the humans now. That,
Yeah.
go back 2 years, everyone wanted to be like, how's this business using AI? How's this business
Right.
using AI? Now it's, how's this business making sure I speak to an actual human?
Hmm.
People, we've all been on the endless cycle with a customer service chatbot. And as soon as we speak to an agent, we're like, thank the Lord, we're
Hmm.
finally speaking to a
Yeah.
human. And it's about kind of leveraging that and trying to speak to the humans. I think it makes you different, it makes you unique, and kind of brings the magic back. I think that AI is
Hmm.
almost slightly seeping away from us.
Hmm.
But when it comes to identity, we were talking about mindset as well, right?
Yeah.
And these two terms are used interchangeably, but I think they're slightly different because identity is who you are, but I think mindset is the frame with which you see the world. They
Hmm.
sound similar, but I think they're a little bit different. So with mindset, of course, you can have a closed and open mindset or a growth mindset, they call it. And I think growth mindset was a big kind of fad or term about 3 or 4 years ago where everyone's like, growth mindset this, growth mindset that. But how do you think someone should frame the way they see the world so that they
Yeah.
can unlock as many opportunities and connections as possible?
Well, I think if you went through a short window of time in your day and was intentional about what is your outlook on any given situation,
Hmm.
do you see things as pessimistic or do you have see things as optimistic? I think that's a real telltale of what your default is. If you have a pessimistic outlook of like critical thinking, and there's an element of that of like asking good questions and trying to understand. But if it's from a critical sense of like, well, that person's stupid or why they did that, or that type of thing, if that is your natural default, that's where that closed mindedness is hard for you to see past you can't see outside the forest because you're inside the trees.
Hmm.
If you are having more of an open mindset saying, oh, okay, that's interesting perspective. I never thought of that before. Or okay, that's interesting. I want to understand that scenario more and kind of look at it from a broader perspective. And this is not rose-colored glasses, like life is great and nothing goes wrong and woo woo wah wah. There's an element of that kind of gets off the rails that serves you nothing, right?
Hmm.
But I think when you can come from that, you then look for the opportunities versus for the reasons that something can't happen. In case in point, when life comes at you, we just talked about the boat rudder thing. Yeah, there's going to be times where you're getting pushed towards the rocks. Do you freak out and let your hands off the rudder and be like, "Well, we're going to crash into the rocks," or do you try to, what can you do? And they're like, "Well, hey, if I move this, 30 degrees this way, I can move the boat, turn the sail." So you start thinking more objectively from a logical perspective versus an emotional perspective.
Hmm.
Now, we were created as emotional beings, and I think that's an amazing thing.
Yep.
Being married for over, 26 years, I love the emotions of having a woman in my life who just understands me and just her embrace and just that element that we're created uniquely that AI cannot have. But our emotions can also be a deterrent to us when we're trying to live life and step into things because we can allow it to consume us. And
Hmm.
we unfortunately we make decisions emotionally and justify it logically more times than not, right?
Yep.
So we have to kind of understand that about ourselves. So as we're going through life, as we're going through situations, are we being critical or are we being more open-ended, open-minded? Because once you start looking through that open lens, you then can start doing the things necessary back to identity of who you are. You can now start putting a game plan, putting yourself in rooms around people that you want to be about, making life changes because you have to change to
Hmm.
be who you want to be. The definition of insanity is what, Krishna? Like doing the
Doing
same
the
thing
same
and
thing,
what?
expecting a different result.
Right, exactly. And that's what we too often we know that statement, but we don't live it out. We expect, well, it's just magically the fairy dust is going to get sprinkled on me one day and I'm going to be a millionaire. Well, that's just not how life works.
Yeah.
So, those people who have more of an open concept and an open vision of things are going to have a better chance of getting closer to that identity and evolving into that person.
Yeah, I really like that boat and the rudder analogy. It really helps to guide someone in understanding that, you know, don't expect that life's not going to have its struggles.
Mm.
I mean, that's something I keep saying throughout this podcast, but it's really true. It
Hmm.
can be the smallest of the biggest struggles, and sometimes that you can be planned for them. Sometimes it strikes you out of the blue. It's expected. But if you have a sense of identity, it becomes like your core crystal you can use to guide
Yeah.
every decision, really, no matter what domain of life we're talking about. Um, and I want to kind of delve a little bit into the way you work because, of course, you are a coach,
Mhm.
business and identity coach. And we're talking about young people, and I can only see this from the frame of a young person, of someone who's new to this world of business, who's maybe not had all the experiences that you've had, um, and just isn't that wise. And so I see it through a different frame than you.
Mhm.
But I wanted to know, when you've coached people and you've taught them, and before teaching them, you've seen what they're struggling with,
Mhm.
what kind of patterns have you noticed in their struggles and the way that people handle this really complicated topic of identity?
Well, I think you have to explain it to them. Everyone, as I mentioned before, we know what the word is, but it seems like this nebulous thing. It's hard to put your hands around, and to an extent, there's some truth to that. I think what you have to do is you have to stand at the core of people and really get to ask good questions of, okay, let me understand your current situation, right?
Mhm.
And it's having an honest, open dialogue with them. Okay. And then what I do is I would ultimately have some visualizations things with them where I'd have them close their mind and think about, okay, let's just assume that your life is different and you're writing the movie of your life a year from now, 5 years from now. I want you to visualize, what would that look like? And have them going down this mental journey. You don't have any obstructions. All those things in your past are no longer there.
Mm.
But 5 years from now, you're where you ultimately want to be. I want you to think about that. I want to be vivid. I want you to have color in you, and just like it's like a 4K high res, like you can smell it, feel it, taste it, like 5D experience, right? Make it as real as real. Now that you have that visualization, why is that important? Why is that important that you be that person? People always want to say, I want to make a lot of money. There's always bigger whys behind it. And typically the patterns that I see, Krishna, is that it is these self-limiting, self-deprecating things that are part of our past that have designed us to be the current version of Dan 1.0, Dan, whatever version of Dan I'm on, right? But we don't see it because we just assume that's who we are. So if we can envision ourselves in a different state, the reality is we can get there. Now, will it turn out to be 100% true of that? No. But let's say it's only 70% of that, or heck, even 50% of that. Would it be better than where you are today? And I would dare say the actual outcome, what would be 5 years from now, regardless of the bank account and whatever you're dreaming, your overall quality of life will be way better than it is today because you're going to go on the journey.
Mm.
And through this path, you may have thought you wanted this, but then you realized, actually, I'm going to do this. Because what I find, if you, and this goes back to the Tony Robbins things, there's six basic human needs. We want certainty, right? We like patterns in our life. We're creatures of habit. We also like uncertainty or variety. I mean, who doesn't want to have like a surprise birthday party? You're like, hey, Krishna, let's go out to dinner tonight. And you just get in a vehicle or you walk down to a new pub you've never been to before. And like, wow, it's a great experience. It's right down the street, right? We love that.
Mm.
We also want love, right? We want to be loved. We all desire for that, right? There's also significance. We all have an element of that. We you have a pink microphone. You're like, hey, I like a pink microphone. That speaks to you. We all have it. I wear this hat. I like this hat on me. I think it looks good on me. I like blue. That gives me a sense of significance, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But then there's contribution, which is how can we give back? And then what's the sixth one? Dang it, I'm missing it, and I apologize. But all these six human needs are all a core of who we are. And what we find is our human needs make up who we are, and none are necessarily better or worse than the others.
Mm.
But as we understand who we are more, we turn more to that love and contribution versus having to be significant, having certainty in our life, and some of the other core things that we think are as important. Again, we always have them in our lives.
Mm.
So when we take someone on this journey, We understand the real why behind the why is because I want to be a better father, or I never had a father figure in my life, right? So I want to be the best dad I can be, or I had experienced this traumatic experience and I want to serve other people who've been through this so they don't have to go through what I went through. And by having more freedom and time, I can teach, I can educate, I can provide money or financial resources, whatever that why is. That's why someone wants to change, or just I want to live longer. I mean, whatever that is for you, you have to get to the core of that. So, but
Hmm.
doing that type of an experience, you then realize, well, what's preventing you from that? Asking questions. Do you think it's probable or possible you could become this person? Yes. Well, let's go down this path. Now it's the opposite. Think of an experience where you had you had a thing where you told yourself a negative. Why do you think that was?
Hmm.
Go back into your childhood. Those ages of like 4 to 7 to 9 years of age are some of the most formidable years in our life. And we've had some bad examples and good examples that influenced us. So if we can rewire our brain, like we talked about earlier, but in this new pathway of who we want to be, we can understand that was our old operating system. This is the new one, and this is how I'm going to work to step into who I want to be. So that's
Hmm.
what I typically see. There's a lot of past things we've never reconciled in our life. And once we understand that, we can rebuild from that.
Wow. One of the patterns is the past, really, and those one thing I picked up on was you mentioned 5 of the 6 Tony Robbins things. Even I don't know the sixth one, but I'm willing to bet that none of those 6 say money is an essential part of life. None of those
No.
6 probably say having an expensive car is one of the
Mhm.
essential parts of life. And even though that's something that a lot of us strive towards, it just goes to show that essentially we're probably trying to get the money to fit one of those 6 things that we need.
Mainly significance, right? We want the money because we feel we're going to be significant. We're going to be an attractive person, and unfortunately, social media has this as a big driver for many. I
Yeah,
want to
it's
be a. I
filtered that
mean, if you
way.
ask how many kids right now what they want to be when they grow up, I don't know the statistics, but how many do you think they want to be an influencer,
Yeah,
or I want to
exactly.
be a YouTuber, or I
Mhm.
want to be a podcaster because they see this as you know a chance of being successful and out there. But then you talk to some of these guys who do it. I just met a guy recently. I can't remember dude's name. It was at a mastermind. It's a pretty private event. And he was at the top of this game. And I mean, he made the money, but he's like, the lifestyle sucks.
Really.
Because now you're everywhere, everyone knows you. You can't just walk into the local pub
Oh,
and have a
yeah.
great meal, so your life changes a little bit. But you're right. So you're absolutely correct. That significance is the need that's being met. But the core ones that we really want is we want to be loved and we want to give back. Those are really the ones that really drive the why behind most things.
Hmm. I think one of the other things to keep in your mind is, especially with the way we see influencers, because you mentioned it, they always show off the instant success value. There'll be
Mm.
courses online which will be like, become a millionaire in 6 months,
Mhm.
or start join my trading circle and you'll be making $100,000 by the end of the week.
Right.
We'll be you'll be seeing yourself in a Lamborghini by the end of the year. Like this kind of instant success, immediate gratification, kind of
Right.
I am the one who's going to fast track everything and don't worry
Mhm.
about it. Um, Maybe it's possible. They all seem to have the reviews and the credibility to back it up, but you don't know that maybe out of the 100,000 students, only 2 made it that quickly, and the rest,
Yeah.
how many actually struggled through it, how many got the support they needed.
Mhm.
And I suppose the most sustainable way of thinking of it is that don't view it as an instant success. View it as almost kind of like the slower personal journey, which is going to make
Mhm.
you stronger in the end. Let me just like, if you give an example, right? If you were to give someone who did not have a strong sense of self, didn't know how they handle money, didn't know what they want to do with money or what they want to do in life, and then you gave them $1 million, they would be successful on paper, but would they know what to do with $1 million? Would they know what the next step is? Maybe not. They'd just be sitting there. Maybe they might blow the money. It would not be used in a proper way. At the same time, if you give it to someone who's maybe spent 10 years learning about themselves, built maybe a small business, they have aims and goals and ambitions, and you give them $1 million, it took them longer to get to that stage, but they'll be able to use it better. They've got better foundation. Their house is not going to topple over. They've got their core is strong because they have a strong sense of identity.
Yeah.
And the reason I mention that is, even though this might sound obvious when you're already successful, for people that aren't successful, chasing that money and instant gratification seems like the best opportunity to get there. And I've been to networking circles where people literally say, "Oh, I started this business because I saw it on TikTok, and I thought, you know what, this has got to be." And I started it and realized actually it wasn't what it lived out to be,
Right.
just because there was this one influencer who said, "Oh, you know, let's flip sofas and make $1 million," and you realize actually this is
Right.
just not what it is. So it's about trying to understand that it's going to be a slower journey. Identity is really important, and it's the
Yes.
cornerstone of every decision you make, whether you want to believe it or not. And the younger you are, the younger you can start working on yourself and learn and be self-aware and pick up
Mhm.
on your own cues, the things that set you off, the things that keep you going, the thing that gets you out of the bed in the morning. If you start picking up it in a more proactive way, it gives you more control in the future, and
Yeah.
it helps you make those better decisions. And I think you are the perfect person to kind of hammer that home, because clearly you're teaching people who will be from, all the way from a young age, all the way to people who are maybe already successful on paper, but still struggle with that deep sense of identity. Like you said, that YouTuber who from the outside seems to be a really successful person, but when you speak to him in person, he's like, "Oh, you know what? My daily life just isn't what I want
Yeah.
it to be. It's just not that fun. If I could, I'd change it."
Mm.
And I think that dichotomy can really make some people struggle. And so that's why I just wanted to kind of summarize that in a sense. Like, if there is one question people should ask themselves from where they are now to how they can get to the person they want to be, what should that question be to push them
Yeah.
in the right direction?
Well, I think I just want to speak to a few things you just mentioned about, obviously money does not solve anything. I think the
Mm.
statistic is like 70% of lotto winners go broke in 5 years. So money
Yeah,
doesn't solve the
shocking.
problem. Robin Williams, who was highly successful, loved by many, ended up committing suicide. Wasn't
Mm.
because he had a lot of money, or it wasn't because he had a lack of money, right? There were some things inside. In
Mm.
my industry specifically, 83% of real estate investors who get in the business don't ever do a deal. So one
Wow.
of the things that I saw the hole in this business is that, why is that? How can I change that statistic? And it comes back to what you're saying, is understanding who you are. Because you can just chase businesses to make money but feel empty. But when you get into a business that it can be used as a vehicle and a tool, and you use it as a lever to build the life that you want, you now see it as something much more than just a money grab, right?
Mm.
Maybe it's to help overall improve your lifestyle. You want to build a legacy, you want to impact X. And that's where it's finding a business that meets you. Another core concept that I'm a part of, and I've taught on, and I'm involved with. It's a concept called life and air. So think of it this way: as a millionaire is full of money, in just general terms,
Mm.
a lifeonaire is someone that's full of life. So this model is, you plan your life first and you build your business around it. Completely backwards. Everyone's like, "Well, I got to build my business, and once I get my business, then I'll have the great life." No. What if
Mm.
you put your ideal life on a calendar and built everything else around it? And that's the core concept of what it does, and that starts at the core of the why. So it comes back a little bit full circle of what we're talking about. Is like, I think specifically as you get older, more mature, we ask, well, why am I here? There's some spiritual aspects to that, and
Mm.
you can
Definitely.
search. I'm a Christian, so I would look to the Bible and understand who I am in Jesus Christ, which that's a discussion in and of itself. But as other individuals, like, why am I here? And what am I doing? So going on that journey gives us a better understanding of, okay, who can I be? I think we're all uniquely created. We all have our different skill sets and gifts that we can serve and be a blessing. And so I think once we kind of ask ourselves that, and get in other rooms and ask other people those similar questions, and if you don't know, learn through others. Well, how did you get to be this? How did you know this is what you really wanted to be? And by asking better questions, you're going to start seeing patterns, because success leaves clues. That's another Tony Robbins quote.
Yeah.
But the truth is that if you see other people seeing the overcoming challenges, you're going to realize they've done something. And a lot of it is getting to the core of who they are, and then just doing the things necessary, as hard as they might be, to make changes in your life, step to that next level. And
Yeah.
that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And like I said at the beginning, if you're someone who's just starting on this journey, this is the absolute right time to prioritize that.
100%.
Don't be the person who chases the instant gratification at the deprivation of your own self-worth or your own
Mhm.
self-identity, because it will come to bite you in the future. And I'm not just saying this as like someone who doesn't know what they're speaking about. It's happened to me where I've focused on the podcast too much, and then maybe given up on a hobby and realized, actually, you know what, I'm not happy because I'm not doing that hobby anymore. And
Mhm.
at one time, like, I used to think it makes sense. Like, for example, my hobby was badminton. It still is. I love badminton. But,
Mhm.
initially when I started the podcast, I used to tell myself, well, you know what, I'll cut out the badminton. I think I should focus on the podcast more. Later on, I realized that badminton's a core part of me. It gets me moving, gets the blood going,
Yes.
keeps me happy.
Yes.
Maybe it is worth getting, 2 or 3 sessions a week in.
Mhm.
And then if it's fine if I don't spend those 6 hours on the podcast, at least it gives me that little peak throughout the week where it just keeps me going. So even I can say that even from this humble, small position I'm at, I've noticed that cutting out on something that's really core to you, really part of your identity, or fulfills one of those 6 things that Tony Robbins says are essential, it does backbite in the end.
Yeah.
So you should always prioritize them. And again, as I said many times, it's about being aware then of what are the things that are essential to me, what are the things that give me
Mhm.
happiness, that keep me going, give me fulfillment. How can I make sure I integrate them into my life?
Yeah.
And everyone is different. And if you ask 1,000 people, there'll be 1,000 different ways they like to keep themselves sane. And they'll have 1,000 different ways of keeping that in their schedule. You have
Yeah.
to find what works for you. Like I said at the very beginning, as much as you can go to a coach, go to ChatGPT, read 1,000 books, no one can tell you your self identity than yourself.
Mhm.
It can seem harsh, but it's true. And you can either view it as, well, that's difficult. I wish someone just told me. Or you could view it as, wow, what a journey I have ahead of me.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to take the first step to learn about myself.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I mean, there's a few things. You're either gonna get to a point where you're just sick and tired of being sick and tired and sick of your current situation that you're gonna kind of be forced because the pain is so great that you don't want to do it anymore. Or
Mm,
if you can be more organic and you just feel like there's something more, you can take the path of doing these things that we're talking about here today and just stepping into this, asking better questions, getting introspective, looking at your past, finding out these 6 needs. The other one is growth, by the way. So that's
okay.
the other need that Tony would say, is find out where you're at on that. So if you were to rank each one on a 1 to 10, what's more important to you? And
Mm,
what you'll find is, as you go through this journey, those will change. It used to be, for me, it was significance. It was certainty and love. But right now, it's contribution and love. Those are
mm,
my core two. Now, I have all those other ones. I have a certain significance element that's always kind of been there. I'm more open to uncertainty than I've ever been in my life. I used to be very risk adverse. Now I'm more open to that kind of stuff. I like the spontaneity of things.
mm.
So as we evolve, we find these things. But what it will provide for you, Krishna, is you're just going to have an overall better satisfaction of life. And
Yeah.
you're going to find out there's a better reason of here than just taking up space and making a bunch of money.
Mm,
And as much as we try to do those things for the dopamine hits or the quick cash or whatever, that always comes up empty. It never fulfills us like it thinks it will. So that's when you get your priorities life. You're right. You work in a business that serves what you want to do and you build your life around it.
mm.
Or you
Yeah.
build your life first and then do your business around it, I should say. That's where the fulfillment comes in. And that's where you really see things grow organically because you're
Yeah.
so passionate about it. And I would even dare say for you, like, yeah, you want to do badminton, that's excellent. But you're also doing a podcast and something that you're clearly passionate about. You're knowledgeable about, you're asking great questions. So it feeds that element of you too. I
Mm,
mean, for me, I just told you, I play video games most every night before I go to bed. It's my unwind. I'll go online, I'll play maybe an hour or two of video games before I go to bed, and then I'll do a little bit of reading, hang with my wife. We do an online game together as a little bit of a bonding time. And then, I fall asleep. Right? That's my pattern, my routine, but that's my release. And I think the big thing that I'm sharing with all of this is another important tool is you need to live by your calendar.
mm-hmm.
So if you don't have a clear calendar of your life and business, your life's just going to be without a rudder, truthfully. Like, you have to assign times to these things. I'm going to wake up at this time. And as silly as it sounds, I'm going to do this. Now, there's fluidity to life and life happens.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're intentional about, okay, I'm going to take this time and I'm going to do a 90-minute deep dive on myself, or I'm going to have 20 minutes of reflection, or in the morning, I'm going to spend some quiet time with God or meditate or whatever that is. Putting these things are healthy habits that will help you develop yourself. and grow into this and understand yourself on a much richer level. And you put those things as must do, can't fail each and every day. And by doing that, you're going to build the mental muscle, the identity muscle, and give you more clarity on that journey.
Yeah.
So whatever those things are that you see you need to do, put it on your calendar and make sure it happens.
Yeah, that's something I didn't think we'd get onto this topic, but that's something I've been doing as well, separately, trying to make a calendar, a timetable.
Mm.
It works. I'd say if there was a score for accuracy, I'm probably about 60% accurate. But considering I'm only starting new, I'm not beating myself down for it. It's the way I measure it is at the end, I say, did I manage to get this done in the time? Did I not? And as I
Yes.
said, my calendar has about 60% green boxes, 40% red boxes.
Right.
We will slowly improve and get
Yeah, and
that
there's
going
apps for
better.
that, and here's the other thing, you gotta give yourself grace to when
Of
things happen,
course,
right?
yeah.
But then important, it's like, did I at least get better 1% today? You're not having to move the needle, like, off the roof or
Mm,
off the scale, but am I progressively getting better? And maybe you had a bad day, and here's the beauty, is the next day you have the ability to start over again.
mm,
It's a redo.
yeah.
You respawn, to talk about video games, right? You have another life to live. You have another chance to go out and be great today. So no matter
Exactly.
what yesterday threw at you, you can choose as you wake up the next morning to have a better day and
Yeah.
do the things the right way.
Yeah. Well, Dan, thank you so much. I mean, I was thinking as you're speaking, I was thinking about how I can summarize this, and really, it's quite difficult. Usually, with some conversation, it's quite easy for me to summarize, but I think in this conversation, we spoke about so many things that even when I'm editing it, I'll be going through it like, oh wow, that's a really good point. Oh wow, that's a really
Sure.
good point. I should pick up on that. Wow, let me make a note for this. So thank you. That all I can say is thank you for sharing so many insights and frameworks that I can use and other people can use. Because as I said, it can be difficult for people at my age who don't have that network to just quickly reach
Mm.
out to someone about these things. For you to come out,
Mhm.
share the things you've learned throughout your 17 years of business, through your coaching, through helping
Mhm.
other people, the things you've learned are invaluable, especially someone my age. So it is really appreciated. And, really talking about, things like how important identity is, it can seem like a pretty soft word, especially in the world where influencers and the money seems to catch all the attention.
Mhm.
How can you do that softer skill of knowing yourself and what really gets you going and how you can focus on yourself? And again, not only do we talk about the importance of it, which is theoretical, but we also talk about the practical side, which is right. We know it's important. How can we integrate it? And that's where you came into things like being self analytical, being thoughtful, being self aware, putting things into your calendar, reflecting, whichever way reflecting works for you. For some, I've learned journaling, I've learned talking to friends. Something I've started doing, like I said, is video reflections. There's a plethora of ways to do self-reflection, but
Mhm.
it's important you find the thing that works for you. And ultimately, like we really started almost like a circular narrative there. You started off talking about the same thing. You can view it as a victim, make you can view the same thing as making you a victim or making you a victor. And I think the same thing goes for identity. You can view it as, well, Dan's just told me that without identity, it's going to be difficult to do things. That sounds awful. I wish that wasn't the case. Or you can view it as, Dan's just told me that if I go on a self journey, which could last years,
Mhm.
it can be really exciting and tell me about myself things that no one will ever be able to tell me. Right. And I think if you view it in that growth mindset, in that exciting way, it really is a journey that takes you from A to B to, like you said, if you vision yourself in 5 years' time and you focus on it, you might even get even further than that vision if you
Yeah.
just make sure your identity is solid.
Well, and I'll say this, it is definitely a lifelong journey, but there are
Yeah.
hacks. We're always looking for hacks to do things quicker, faster, easier. And I'll say the biggest hack for me, and this is, I don't get paid for this, I get no spiffs, but whenever you can immerse yourself in anything, that's how you get to mastery.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways you can do this is, Tony Robbins does an event once a year. It's virtual, or you can do it in person. Unleash the power within.
Yeah.
If you go to one of those events, it will quickly align your identity. You spend 4 days and you do some pretty amazing things at the event. It's hard to even put it into words, but you can dedicate, 4 days of your life to transform yourself. And that's what happened to me. I've been to like 3 or 4 of them, and each time I walk away a better version of myself. But the first
Wow.
time you go with an open mind and really go there just to play all out. You will learn a lot about yourself and get clear direction. Or you can take the slow and steady approach and just kind of do it organically. But
Mm.
I just got to a point in my life, I was just sick and tired. I needed something. And that was the catalyst that helped me kind of launch from making little to no money to making a $500,000 in my business in 8 months.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
that type of stuff is the shifts that you can see changes in your life dramatically of like living in Wisconsin and then now running my business remotely in Florida. Those are the type of shifts that I intentionally did because of my identity, that I was able to make these moves, not without challenges, but I was able to do it successfully. And that's
Mm.
just what you can do in your life as well.
Yeah, I agree. And again, people like you, Dan, people like you going out to coaches as well. There'll be a coach for different reasons. If you're already running a successful business, there'll be a business
Mhm.
coach. If you're someone who's starting off, just starting off, if you're looking for a coach, it doesn't have to be someone really established. It could just be someone who's like one step ahead of you. So if
Absolutely.
you're a new entrepreneur, you don't need to be, just for the sake of an argument. You don't need to reaching out to Tony Robbins for business and life advice.
Right.
You can just go to, the other person who's a student and they may be running a
Hmm.
business that makes £1,000 a month and be like, oh, how do you do that? Just
Correct.
going that one step ahead, that's still a coach. You can still learn loads
Hmm.
of things from them. Um, and so, surround yourself with the people you want to be with, looking to find ways to improve and constantly self-educating. It's a really magical journey, I think.
Yeah.
When it comes to investment, you can invest in loads of things, but the investment on yourself will always pay back. There's always over 100% ROI on
Hmm.
focusing on yourself. And whilst it can seem a bit, you know, wishy-washy speaking on it like this, once you've gone through the journey, and like I said, I've only gone through a couple of steps, you've probably gone through it much more than me. You can look back and go, wow, that was so worth it. And I can't wait to do it again. And there'll definitely be setbacks, difficulties in the way. Sometimes even finding out that for you to progress further, you have to sometimes make tough decisions like leave a certain venture or leave certain people behind or, make difficult decisions. But it just teaches you and it makes you grow. And that's really what this is all about. And I think, like I said from the beginning, this, 1 hour conversation we've had, Dan, definitely does not do justice to this really deep topic. It's
Sure.
impossible to do that.
It, it
But,
would be, yes. We've covered a lot in literally what is a short one, a long but short window of
exactly.
time. Yes.
It's impossible to cover it all, but that's what the beauty of it is, right? And like I said, in the future, even in a couple of months' time, when something new comes up, or if I come up with a new idea, I'd love to have you again to further talk
For
about
sure.
this or
I'm
something
an
else
open
about
book. You
business.
can contact me, hit me up. You got my information, and anyone who wants to connect with me, they can find me on the socials as well. I'm pretty easy to find.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really good. So, Dan, thank you for coming on. How can people find out more about you and get in touch?
Yeah, I mean, you can go on Instagram. I'm at Dan Ahlborn. It's like the name, how it's spelled under my name, Ahlborn. You can also check me out on Facebook, on YouTube as well. It's probably the three main socials you can connect with me. Send me a DM. Insta's kind of where was probably the best ways to reach me. We can talk, chat more. If I can be a blessing to you, serve in any way capacity, that's cool. I
Yeah.
also have a free ebook if you're interested, talking about how you can kind of the 5 ways of just finding peace in your life and business through real estate, with having the right identity. So that's something to anyone who's interested, they can DM me directly and I can get them a copy of that.
Amazing, perfect. And as I said, you're a great person to speak to, Dan. Thank you so much. The stuff you talked about is invaluable. Genuinely, I can't thank you
Thank
enough.
you.
And as I said, it's stuff that I'll be reflecting on for a while as I keep editing this and keep looking back at it. And I can already imagine the amount of kind of insightful things I can take away from it and share with the other people that want to listen. So thank
Awesome.
you for sharing that,
My
and I'd love
pleasure.
to have you again to talk further.
You bet, man. Thank you.
Thank you.